So greetings, everyone. Subject of tonight's session is going to be an overview of living our truth. So I'm very much looking forward to hear what Dr. Alok Pandey has to say about this particular subject. Should be a fascinating session, so over to you, sir.
Namaste. So the subject is living our truth. It's very interesting to phrase it as living our truth. Is truth different in different people? Well, truth is the same, but it acts differently in different people, taking into consideration the stage of development, the purpose for which it operates within us. So it's not a fixed dogma. Now, last time when we spoke about finding the truth, few things, just to recapitulate. One was, and this is something very obvious, one doesn't need to be spiritual or even scientific. One can say for sure that truth does not lie in appearances. This is something which life teaches us, experience teaches us. And anybody with a little perceptive intelligence can understand that truth does not lie in appearances. So the first rule, if rule there can be about living the truth, is don't react to appearances. Because if we are responding to appearances, by its very nature, we are falsifying the very first position. We must perceive the truth before we can act upon it. So don't react to appearances, rather act. So one of the first practices which Sri Aurobindo advocates in the Gita, in the Synthesis of Yoga also, he speaks very much about it. The Gita also speaks about it, is that to learn to step back from appearances. The mother very beautifully describes it, that we have a tendency to rush and act and react based on what's happening all around. So senses perceive something and the rest is constructed by the mind. We don't even know that how neatly the eternal dreamer mixes facts and fantasies in our consciousness. And it's done with a wonderful purpose. But all the time, there are things which are picked up as facts. And we confuse facts as truths. Information as reality. That's why in Savitri very beautifully Sri Aurobindo says that facts are husks of truth. In other words, what we see happening outside, the event which is conjured by the mind, by the senses, the eyes, hearing and all the other senses which are less active, but mainly the eyes and the hearing, are simply facts as observed by the senses. And we should hold on there. It's not necessary it is the truth, but it hides within it something, which is what we have to unearth. So then, what is applied to these facts? Usually in most human beings, it's reason. Reason applies itself to these facts. And based on that, it draws its own conclusion of what's happening and the action or the course of action. But here too, it makes a number of errors. The primary data is still of the senses, number one. And number two, a very important thing that when the reason applies itself, we don't even realize that it has a very preconceived a priori judgment and bias. Very few people can get rid of it. Very difficult. Because our human mind is so conditioned that we carry certain inherent biases in our system, and many we develop through the process of what we call as education, and of course through society and people around. So by the time we apply reason to this first data, it's already falsified. And then the third thing which operates within us, which of course completely falsifies the action, is the desire for a particular result. Truth doesn't care for our personal results. It cares for the one result for which it is striving. And it is to manifest itself. So when we look at this whole world scenario within us and around us, what is really truth doing? It is manifesting itself. All creation is an act of manifestation of the one. That's why it's called as Leela, because it cannot be understood by the human mind which is standing here, and that manifestation is taking place through ways and means which completely baffle the human intelligence. In Savitri, there is a very beautiful passage describing this state, where he says, against human judgment, this is his cosmic crime. This his is the Lord. And what is this cosmic crime? To reward the sinner. And while the virtuous are met with defeat, the human reason is completely baffled because it already creates, sections, slots, according to which it thinks this is the true thing. And then when we act based on a certain result, then obviously it cannot be an impulsion of truth within us. So, step by step, we have to disengage ourselves from all these various trap knots in which we have tied up truth. And one of them is, of course, senses. So, while senses will give us the data, we have to wait and hold on. Many times, a momentary senses may report something momentarily, and it may be a moment's expression, but it is not the truth. Truth is much deeper, and I'll take a couple of examples. One example was where a lady sadhika who has been living in the ashram for many, not years, decades, and mother had taught her painting by holding her hand literally. So she used to go into these swings. So one day, naturally, when you are so close to the divine, no fault of hers, it's not easy to bear that tremendous pressure. So one day she tells mother, I am going from here, packing my bags and going from here. So mother is just watching very quietly, and then she had a bunch of roses given by the mother, white roses given by the mother, and she takes it and throws it back and says, you don't love me and I'm going from here. And she leaves the mother's room, goes to her place in Golkund, begins to pack the bags. Behind her comes the mother's personal attendant, Vasudha Ben. And she tells her, mother has sent this card for you. Keep it. I don't want to see it. Okay? You don't want to see. Don't you want to know what mother said after you left? After a moment's pause, he says, okay, tell me, what did mother say? Says, mother said, she does not know how much she loves me. Now just imagine. There is something so deep within which mother saw, and the moment she uttered it, it was like a magic formula, Khulja Sim Sim. That magic formula which opens the door to infinite treasures inside us. Otherwise, it looks like a rock. And it opened a door, then obviously packing was cancelled, and eventually she lived on here and left her body much, much later. So when we rush at people's actions or outer behavior, judging it very quickly, sharply, rashly, harshly, condemning them, or even eulogizing them for that matter, we must understand that we have missed something very fundamental in this creation. To really act on the basis of truth, one must have tremendous compassion and benevolence, because the divine acts on the basis of compassion and benevolence. So I just want to read, I don't want to, delay this reading, which I find very, very interesting, and based on that we will develop the theme. This is a conversation of the mother dated March 22nd, 1967. And she has given a message that year. The message is cling to truth. Now, she's saying hold on to truth. And we'll see when we are going to Sri Aurobindo's room, it's written there, cling to truth. That message often reminds me that it's a two-way message. When you are going to the divine, cling to truth. What is cling to truth? Deep inside us, that truth, hold on to that. When mother was asked, 24th April is coming, how should we prepare ourselves? She said, ask yourself one question. That's how she said, how to prepare for the 24th April darshan. Ask yourself only one question. What is the most important thing for you in life? That's all. And I find it so interesting. And often with children you can ask, play this. What is that one thing? If you have to ask the divine one thing, what will you ask for? If somebody woke us up at night, midnight, and said, ask something, what will we ask? Now she says, hold on to that. What is the most important thing for us in life? That is what we have to hold on to. So that is the first aspect. So she says, makes a comment on that. Because of this message for the new year, everybody is talking about this message everywhere. It has given a good jolt. Everyone is claiming to be a defender of the truth. So when we are going, cling to truth. That which is the most important thing within us. That's the most sacred thing. And when we are coming back from the room, even more importantly, cling to truth. So both ways, it works both ways. Why cling to truth? Before we have gone to the divine, it is still okay. I mean, in the sense we don't know. Mother says when we act in ignorance, when we don't know things, it's okay. But when we know the things and then we act with awareness, then it has very serious repercussions. So cling to truth. So here she says, everyone is claiming to be a defender of the truth. They ask me questions and everyone is surprised that truth as he conceives it isn't established in the world. Where is the supramental creation, new creation? Everybody asks this question. It's the wrong question. The correct question is, when will I have the eyes to see the new creation? Maybe it is much closer than we imagine it to be. See, when Nalnida was asked about Superman, he says he may be in your next door neighbor. We don't know because we have this idea of Superman. Superman will be doing some superhuman things in the sense he is an aggrandized humanity. But there's an asuric kind of humanity. That's not what is Superman. Superman is a being of extreme compassion and benevolence, even though he has tremendous power. He is very vast and he acts on the basis of compassion. So she says, they ask me questions and they ask that everybody as he conceives it, truth as he conceives it, isn't established in the world. So I am beginning to be forced to wage war for the truth against all the conceptions of truth. And that's rather interesting. So the second thing which is important is truth is not only not in appearances, that is easy to understand. But truth is not in my opinions, viewpoints, and my conceptions. This is more difficult. So because conceptions are like important frameworks. We cannot operate without conception. Without conception means to live in the freedom of the infinite and act on the basis of not some fixed theory, but based on an impulsion at a given point of time. It's very difficult for the human mind. We invariably need some prop to hold on to before we act. For instance, there is here that old idea of vegetarian food. Thank God mother is, that time vegan food was not there. So she's not talking about vegans. So this is a conception of vegetarian food. Some people write to me indignantly that these holy rules are being increasingly broken. Someone wrote to me a first time asking me to answer. I neglected. So he wrote a second time to tell me, what can we do if you don't answer? So the mother replied something like this. Truth is not a dogma. You see, and it's so interesting. Vegetarianism is primarily within India, it has been practiced. Though outside, now people have begun to practice for medical reasons. But in India itself, vegetarianism was primarily meant for the Brahmin who was a seeker of truth. When were Kshatriyas vegetarians? In fact, there was proper sacrifice because their job required it. So, even in India where vegetarianism was practiced, it was meant for those who are seeking the greater light, for the higher truth. So the consciousness should not become gross, it should not be pulled down by violent impulses inside, therefore vegetarianism. And even there, it was said that you practice the sadhana and it will drop off when the time comes. But for the Kshatriya who had to fight the war, it was not vegetarianism. Because he had to have a diet which will give him strength. So it was based on a certain logic. It was not something as a dogma. So she is explaining this. Dogma is when we take a fixed position about things and apply it universally on all. So there are plenty of dogmas and let's hear what mother has to say. It's very interesting. For instance, Truth is not a dogma that one can learn once and for all and impose as a rule. So wherever we impose anything, you see, sometimes when we do it things as a rule, it can it works very strangely. Someone asked me once, "Sir, if I read Savitri 108 times, will I realize God?" Now, it's not like God is counting our beats. So, there are plenty of people who have realized God without doing anything. So, first we should be very clear that He is not a mathematician, an omnipotent mathematician who is going to give the result based on what we have done outwardly. As Sri Aurobindo says, He does not give result based on sadhana the way we understand, but based on the sincerity of our aspiration. So sometime for a person, one single reading of Savitri or even just utterance of one word, a phrase can change. A casual passing phrase can change our life and we may have a grand revelation. Whereas for another person, of course, it will have an impact, it will have an effect. That's a different thing altogether. But we are reading or doing the Nam Japa, but we are constantly thinking, now I'll get the result, now I'll get the result. And God has a tremendous sense of humor. He says, "Oh, you want a result? What do you want?" "I want to have a vision like that." "Oh, you want to have a vision?" Arjuna had it last time, and you know what happened to him? So he may give us some little something, and we are very happy. I have seen God. It doesn't work like that. You see, there is a very interesting truth reveals itself when it knows the time is ready. Na yamatma na pravachane na medha na bahuna shrutin yamaveshe vranute ten labhyas tasyesha atma vibranute tanuswam. It reveals itself to one who wants to know it sincerely. So we have these wonderful steps given in Isha Upanishad. If you really look at it, how to really live this truth. But before I come to that, something very interesting. Truth is not a dogma that one can learn once and for all and impose as a rule. Truth is as infinite as the Supreme Lord. And it manifests every instance for those who are sincere and attentive. Only two conditions are required. And it is infinite. In one person, it may express in one way. In another person, it may express in very different ways. Okay. Share an example of a story which I heard from the person who was involved. And it can shake somebody. Again, don't make it as a dogma. But he was telling me that, once when he came to the ashram, he saw a man who was basically just happy person. He was neither doing any work as normally you expect. He used to go regularly, eat food and remained basically happy. He would sleep well, eat well. So one day he asked, "Don't you think that you are in the ashram, you are supposed to do sadhana? And is this what you are doing?" So this man laughs and says, "Should I listen to you or should I listen to my guru?" He said, "Of course the guru. What did your guru tell you?" He said, "I asked Sri Aurobindo, what should I do?" And Sri Aurobindo replied, "Eat well, sleep well, be happy." The man told me who has asked. He said, eat well. He said, I was speechless. What could I say after that? No. He was following it literally. He said, all right. So he would eat well, he would sleep well, and he generally remained happy. Sometimes, these things, Dara, we know, these are examples to show us how differently it operates in different people. So Dara we know was Sayyid Ibrahim, and he was called Dara because he was Dara in his previous life. And there were no restrictions on him, except when he said, "No, I want to do namaz 5 times." Sri Aurobindo said, "In that case, you can go and do it elsewhere. This is not the place for that." Because his fundamentalist mind suddenly came, and there is a very interesting letter of Sri Aurobindo about fanaticism and fundamentalism, and that's written to him. But that was later on. So Dara would sit in his room and, it was a sight to see him. I don't know, the 2 hands, there would be 2 cigarettes, very scandalizing, but in his feet he would have a mosquito repellent. So if somebody saw 3 places, the smoke is coming out. And often he would keep his window open And one day some thief is coming and stealing from his window and he's watching it. And somebody said, Dara, what are you doing? He said, no, it's amazing how he's stealing my clothes. So this Dara would not go for food in time. So dining room people complain to Sri Aurobindo that he doesn't go in time to, come into the dining room in time. So what should we do? Now Sri Aurobindo's reply was, go and give the food to him. So what to do? So they went. After a few days they said, sir, he doesn't open the door. Okay, you put the food outside, hang it. Sadhaks are also very smart. There is no nail to hang the... They want him to say something to this Dara. and Sri Aurobindo says, why? You can't fix a nail? So fix a nail, hang the food and let him eat when he wants. Now this was to Dara. Again, it cannot be applied to another person. Someone like Dyuman Bhai, day and night he is busy with work. Pranabda, whom the mother said is my shadow, barring, during that period when... and how what she would say to one person, it would be very different to another. Not only that, what she has said today, next day she may change completely. So one day somebody asked, Mother, yesterday you said this, and today you have completely changed. Why did you change your opinion? That was the word. Mother says, because I have no opinions. Opinions are fixed. I have my opinion. Said, based on the vision of the moment, I reveal what has to be revealed. So it's not based on any opinions, it's based on the dynamic impulsion of truth at a given point of time. And Amal Kiran says so beautifully that once he went for changes in Savitri and the mother said, you think that you know better than Sri Aurobindo, all that word, and we know that whole story. But next time she said, okay, you, based on whatever if you think there are typological errors. And he says, because my attitude was very different. First time I went as if I am going to help Sri Aurobindo in some way. And next time when I went, I said, Mother, I know Sri Aurobindo is perfect, but with regard to people, and these are probably crept in while writing down. There are mistakes like that. Not that Sri Aurobindo made a mistake, but when you are dictating and somebody is writing. And she said, okay, you make a list and do it. So there is no fixity in the action of truth. So she says that two things are important. Sincerity. Sincerity by definition means that I want to be transparent before the divine and I want to live according to my highest ideal. And every part, because we are not just one part, central sincerity is relatively easy. That okay, my life is meant for serving the divine. This is central sincerity. But there are many parts in us which don't want. They want to go their own way. So another definition of sincerity is to organize our whole life around the highest ideal. That means our thought should be organized like that. Our heart should be organized like that. Every moment and every movement should be uplifted, which some parts will easily be ready to be uplifted, others may not, because they will react. Others may totally resist. And yet slowly tweaking has to be done, because nothing is to be discarded, nothing is to be rejected in toto, but its falsehoods are to be rejected, so that the truth can emerge from within it. And then she says something very interesting. The same day, I got another letter. The whole letter ranted and raved about all that's going on. What? This place is worse than the world. She laughs and she answered, were truth to manifest in such a way as to be seen and understood by all, they would be terrified by the enormity of their ignorance and false interpretation. The divine had once manifested the truth on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Even his closest friend was shaken. This is your will? I thought you were a very goody-goody guy. I had heard that you were just playing flute and people were dancing. What kind of dance is this? He says, this is my another dance. This dance will prepare you for that dance of gopis. They have gone through this stage. You go through this. After this dance with Kali, then you can dance the Radha's dance. And Arjuna couldn't imagine that is this what? And the similar phrase in Kathopanishad, when Nachiketa asks Yama, tell me about that being, that truth, that resplendent light. He says, oh, you want to know about that? Sages and heroes are meat in his banquet, and I, death, am simply a spice. You want to know about him? Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarkam, nema vidyuto agni, kuto yamagni. That all this sun appears like a shadow. So truth conceals itself, covers, allows many things which we may call as errors, but he uses them as steps of his dance so that we can eventually catch up with him. That's why there is a phrase in Savitri, our errors are his steps upon the way. And she says, everyone is the defender of the truth. One about food, vegetarianism. Another about money. You can't take money, you should completely, abstain from money. Another about business. You cannot do business. Another about relationships. Everyone has his hobby horse. She has a wonderful sense of humor in some of her conversations. The wonderful thing is that till now, not one has told me, maybe my opinions aren't true. Instead of asking her, show me the light of truth. Ask her, what really is the true thing to do? Everybody has fixed hobby horses, and based on that, they are judging the whole world and judging everything. Maybe my opinions aren't true, not one. Maybe my way of seeing or feeling isn't true, not one. They are all in full truth. You see that story of the Zen story where a monk, somebody comes to ask a monk, tell me about, I want to join this place. So tell me, what is the qualification? He says, I will see that later. Can we play a game of chess? He says, okay, I know chess. We can play. Just game of chess is required. He said, hold on. In this game of chess, whoever loses, his head will fall off. He has to be beheaded. So now he is a lot more alert, attentive, as they say. So the game starts. This fellow wants to win, but the monk is very good. Also, he is fully concentrated. At one point, however, this fellow sees that he can win. But just before making that move, he holds on and wonders, if I win, this monk has to keep his promise and has to be beheaded. What's my life worth? At least this person has done so much sadhana, so much yoga. It's better that I lose the game. And as he says, I have lost, the monk says, now you are ready, come, be initiated. It was not about the game of chess at all. It was about compassion. We cannot, understand life without that. So she says, the defenders of truth are often worse than the enemies of the truth. But I can't say anything about that because I am the one responsible. I told them, cling to truth. No, they all make the same mistake. They confuse truth with the old idea of virtue. They all make the same mistake as the moral error. And truth, if we really read some of Krishna's story, even Rama's story, once somebody told me about Sri Aurobindo. He said, Sri Aurobindo has said you should never tell a lie. I said, yes. So why did he write his name as another name for traveling by the sea? He asked me the question, a very dilemma question. Why did he give another name? So I had a funny answer that time which flashed. I said, who told you that he wrote a lie? No, it is there. It's written in the book. So I said, has the book told you what is the name he wrote? He says, no. I said, I'll tell you. He wrote the name Jyotindranath. Do you think he told a lie? I said, do you think he told a lie? When he wrote Jyotindranath, was he not telling the ultimate truth about himself? The Lord of Light, he is everything. He has assumed all these names and forms. So it is a way of looking at things which is so important. So she says, how many times, and above all, they want a truth expressed in a few very clear and well defined words. So they can say, this is true, the old calamity of religions. This is true, therefore the rest is falsehood. Calamity of religions. So you want a rule book, pocket guide, take it out and see, Hadith, number so and so, do this, don't do this. So based on that, you act. Then don't question, because it is written in the rule book. This is so dangerous, and this is what has led to calamity of religions. How many times Sri Aurobindo said, when a thing is true, you can be sure that its opposite is also true. When you have understood this, then you will begin to understand. And then she says, people come and tell me the divine grace can act only in the truth. And I shouldn't forget that. People are coming and telling mother. Just imagine they are violating the very first rule. First rule is open to the mother and surrender to her. So they are coming and telling her, Mother, Sri Aurobindo has written that grace will act only in conditions of the truth. The divine grace can act only in the truth. And I shouldn't forget that. I means the mother. Mother laughs. There is a quotation from Sri Aurobindo in which he says that divine grace will answer, but do not think it will answer in falsehood. An admirable sentence, only they don't know. What they don't know? They are the possessors of the truth. Falsehood is for others. So, actually look from one point of view. All these quotes till now, body, mind, heart, life, they are all steeped in falsehood. When we understand it, then we really come to start awakening to the truth. And it's the action of truth on these which transforms them. That is the whole thing about the yoga. And even intelligent people, that's the strange thing, because it's so idiotic. Even people who anyway have a brain, who understand, fall into the trap. And then she says, thanks to all this, thanks to all this. And then she speaks about a vision, which is very interesting. And she says, everything, a movement that makes use, how does truth act? It acts a movement that makes use of everything to lead towards the goal. It's not about virtue and vice, it's not about victory and defeat, it's not about success and failure. It's everything that leads us towards the goal. Even errors, which aren't errors, because when the consciousness is there, the error isn't one committed by ignorance. A thing is said or done because that's what needs to be said or needs to be done. He uses our ignorance to lead us from there. You see that wonderful phrase, Asadoma sadgamya, tamsoma jyotirgamya, mrityorma amritam gamya. You see, it is so remarkable. I mean, we all have heard about it from our childhood. But what I feel beautiful about this particular shloka is it shows a movement. A movement is not a line drawn and this is this and this is that. It is a change from one to another state. It's a transition. It's using this to unveil itself and reveal itself. So, it may in appearance be even a blunder, yet it's exactly what is needed for everything to move forward. Move forward luminously towards the desired goal. It's absolutely marvelous. This is the highest vision. Of course, then we can take this attitude that, okay, it doesn't matter what I do, try it. Somebody asked the mother, Sri Aurobindo, that, what about free will, fate? He says, it doesn't matter whether you take this position that all is fated or all is free will. You will still be compelled to choose. That's exactly how the Gita starts. You will be compelled to make a choice because this is there in human nature. It's inbuilt, it's programmed. And it is equally true that the divine will use your choices to ultimately fulfill his purpose. So ultimately the whole thing comes upon how to choose. And there the mother gives us a very wonderful, simple one-liner to choose without preference and execute without desire. All that is to be seen is that in my choices, where is my selfish interest? Am I doing it for my pleasure? Am I doing it because I am going to gain something? Even going to God, maybe with this idea that I am going to gain 108 times Savitri, what I will get. Maybe the divine may say, okay, 108 times I'll write in the book that you have done. It is always done with some desire, some pleasure. That's why the mother says divine should be sought for the sake of the divine, not with any other ulterior purpose. The moment we put an ulterior purpose, we have limited. So when we look at this unfolding, essentially, if we really want to know whether we are acting in truth or not, first we should try to extricate every trace of selfish interest, egoistic involvement, and it's not easy. That's where the whole catch lies. Whole sincerity is about that. Am I really doing something so that I can get advantage from it? Am I doing something to fulfill my own conception because I have taken a certain stand and it should be like that? Then I am falsifying my basic position. That's why the practice of equanimity is a fundamental practice, and Nishkam Karma is another fundamental practice. If we can practice Nishkam Karma and equanimity, then we are likely to receive that direct impulsion of truth. So she says that consciousness is this marvel of a consciousness that makes everyone do what must be done, puts everything in its place, sorts out everything, and it's our idiocy, an absolutely ignorant and stupid vision that would have us believe in mistakes, in errors, in. Then she says, she stops, because many times the divine knows that, what he is going to say will be again misunderstood by the human mind. Too vast a teaching, too plastic, too infinite, too supple. Our mind will make even a dogma out of this. How to make a dogma? She said, there is no mistake, I'll do whatever I feel like doing. That's not what is being said here. This is from the poise of the highest consciousness that don't believe that the divine is judging, condemning based on a rule book. That's all that is being said. She will come to how we should act. But here, this is what is being said. Everyone is a problem to be resolved. That's how the divine is seeing. Meaning thereby, I am not unique in my problem. Everyone. Only thing is that some are aware that there is a problem, others are not. And it's very easy to understand who is a little one step further. If we are not even aware that I have a problem, everybody else has a problem, then we are very still far from that first step. So she says, everyone is a problem to be resolved. So all those problems interpenetrate. And it is the whole that must be led towards precisely this truth, the true one. So she is using all these things. Everybody is a problem to be resolved. And all these interpenetrate. They are interdependent, interconnected. It cannot be cut off. Look at the vision of the divine. But I have spent, hours in admiration, a blissful admiration at this marvel of organization with all the little things around you, all the little people around you, all the little circumstances. How everything is used toward that goal and we hardly understand. And then this overwhelming mind which understands nothing and asserts itself in its all-powerful knowledge. Oh, it's so comical. Meaning thereby, truth is, you cannot fix truth either in terms of space nor in terms of time. A truth of a moment may completely change the next moment because it's all the time manifesting itself. So what does truth do? What is the action of truth? What is it busy doing? It is the maximum use of all possibilities and all impossibilities. So, all capacities and all incapacities. A maximum use in a maximum power and a maximum compassion. And also a smile. If you are smiling, now even that has been corrupted, unfortunately, People know how to smile, fake smiles. This is the worst kind of thing that you ever want to, Ironical smile is still okay. You understand, the fellow is smiling, you say, I know what you're saying. At least the person is revealing to you, that is still okay. But a fake smile, yes sir, I'm so happy. Oh, you have come. I'm so happy to meet you. And heart is saying, when will he go? That is the worst kind of thing that human beings have copied, faked everything, but the worst faking is faking a smile. So, she says, a smile, a sense of humor. Divine is a wonderful. We have painted that very first thing is falsified. Shurabindo without a smile. Somebody asked Shurabindo, Dilip Kumar Roy. So he says, who painted this? And in fact, he uses the word, what a blundering ignoramuses you are. We are very hard hitting. He says, who told you that I never smile? Probably you must have read Nevinson's impression in the courtroom when he was indrawn. Or perhaps, during the darshan day, you are filing past and you don't have time to notice. How can there be divine without a smile? His smile makes, he alone can smile. And one who is one with the divine can smile at everything. And why he can smile? Because he knows no power can slay my soul, it lives in thee. Your presence is my immortality. One who is in connection with the divine knows that whatever be the circumstances, however dark it may appear, whatever mistakes and errors one may have made, yet the Lord is there. So that brings the smile. So she says a smile. So if you want to know truth, first we must learn to smile. People are very say, no, I want truth. So when they start doing that, they will say, first learn to smile, then we'll talk about what is truth. So she says, and this overwhelming mind, a sense of humor, such a benevolent irony, so full of compassion, so wonderful. And this overwhelming mind, a fantastic phenomenon. Indeed, it spends its time judging what it doesn't know and deciding on what it doesn't see. As long as the mind believes it can know things, it is far from truth. That's how the Isha Upanishad says. Avijñātam vijanata, vijñātam avijanata. Ken Upanishad. That if you think that you know it not. And he who has not the thought of it knows it, because it will reveal itself. Then there was the vision of others and the remembrance of the time when those things had great importance and were taken very seriously with a solemnity, a holy moral solemnity. God has said this, and if you don't do this, you'll be condemned forever. So there was a time when mankind was living with those conceptions. So you see, we have advanced at least one step. Mankind has got rid of that kind of a God. A God who is busy with carrot and stick, judging us, condemning us to eternal damnation. Thankfully, mankind has got rid. Divine action. Of course, people that way, the fear has gone, so they act foolishly, but doesn't matter. That is better than making a stern God who is... You see what happens with a stern God? He is the God who is entertained by the jihadi mindset. He is a stern God. He punishes if you don't believe in Him the way I believe in Him. So that is the stern God. It's better that people for a moment go through that phase, that it's okay. God is benevolent, He is compassionate, He understands. And then she says, unlike in human beings, the action of the divine is not governed by feelings or principles, but by the dharma of each being or thing known through identity. So the third block is principles. And some people are so fastidious and conscientious. They must wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and after doing all the nitya karma, they must do the panch karmas. As if they don't do this, God will be very annoyed. And I have seen such fantastic examples. I've even quoted this, And not only that, this is a great pride. When you go to somebody's, once I remember going to somebody's house and he saw that I woke up at 5:30. Now, a person comes to give a talk, gets up at 5:30. So he very proudly said, I to wake up at 4 o'clock. It's very good for you, it's good for health. What do you do after that? He said, after that, I take a bath And then after doing this, my prayers, then I start my day. So I said, okay. So, not saying about myself, but I said, but there are others, their whole day is a prayer. They don't pray and start the day. They start the day and the whole day is a prayer. That's another way to look at it. It's a different thing whether a person understood or not. We get so much that just because one is doing a certain kind of ritual every day, God is very happy. God sees that little thing going on inside the heart. That's why Arjuna is given the honor, the greatest privilege of receiving the greatest scripture. He is given the privilege. Who is Arjuna? He cannot be regarded as the most righteous person. Yudhishthir would qualify for that. Nor a Mahatma, Vidur would qualify for that. Nor a Bhishan Pratigyavan who kept his promises like Bhishma. He would qualify for that. None of them. Nor like a Danveer Karna who stands by friend. None of them. Because they were all stuck to their own principles. And so when Shri Krishna advises Yudhishthir, maybe Bhishma can, Drona can be killed, provided you say, Ashwathama hato hata naro va kunjaro. It was a great compassion to Yudhishthir. This story is so much misunderstood. Ashwathama was actually an elephant who was killed. But it was the Lord's way of saying, why are you so much stuck to this idea? Look at the larger context. Here a whole civilization is at stake. People are dying, and based on which side wins, the path of dharma is going to open. And if you look at it from that standpoint, we know that Shri Krishna did that little trick of making it appear like it is already sunset. So if one looks at it, he tricked Jarasandha into Shri Aurobindo. See, Shri Aurobindo, many things are parallel with Shri Krishna. And one of them is during the Second World War, on 15th August, when Hitler and his army wanted to give maximum blows to the Allies, that day, because of a fog, mysterious fog which came from nowhere, the Allies were saved. And they asked Shri Aurobindo, were you behind that mysterious fog? So he just smiled and says, how does it matter? So look at something very similar. Mysterious fog appears and covers everything in a blanket. So if I look at it one way, that is there an interference in a fair war? Nobody should take sides. He should be just like a Nispaksh. This is what we forget, that truth is not just an impartial witness. Truth is constantly expressing itself in countless ways. And this expression of truth in creation is what is dharma. There is no other dharma except whatever helps in the manifestation of truth. And therefore we have swadharma. In each individual, the impulsion is unique and different. Because the divine loves infinity. He doesn't want to make clones. He is not an AI, he is DI. In AI, everything is standardized according to a format. And based on the format, it will give you the probability. He is DI. So he sees the heart of every creature, identifies with it. And based on what is necessary, there is this impulsion which comes. Now our work is to be attentive to that impulsion. That's what is called sincerity and attentive. And this attentive to be this impulsion is only possible when there is peace and quietude in the being. If all the time there is agitation, excitement, fear, rashness, then we cannot attend the divine impulsion. It's a different thing that there is the greater truth that even when we don't attend to the divine impulsion, even when we act foolishly and ignorantly and erroneously, he still uses it for his purpose. That's a different part. That's what we have read earlier. But as far as we are concerned, she says, all human activity is based on reactions, which are themselves the result of feelings and sensations. And for people who are considered superior and who act according to reason, everyone has his range of principles on which he bases his action. But the other fact is interesting. For instance, when a human being loves someone or doesn't love someone, his reactions to the same phenomena are not always opposite, but extremely different. to such an extent that ordinary human judgment is based on those reactions. It would be good to take a very precise example, that of disciples and the master. The disciples almost never understand the master, but they have opinions of him and of his ways of acting. They see and say, the master did such and such a thing. He acts with this person in such and such a way, and with that other person in such and such other way. Therefore, he loves this person and doesn't love that one. So people used to ask, mother smiled a little longer, somebody stayed a little longer in Sri Aurobindo's room, somebody was allowed to do this, somebody was given work in Sri Aurobindo's and the mother's room. Therefore, they are by default superior. They may be, that's not the point. But if you look at from the highest sense, there is no superior and inferior. In each one, he is working out this grand miracle. In one person in one way, in the other person in another way. Divine is not busy giving us marks and categorizing us superior, sadhak, okay, next, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not how he operates. In each one, it is unique and wonderful. So she says, that's the mistake we make. So when we love somebody, we are ready to forego many things, overlook. When we don't love someone, human love, she is saying, then even if the person has done everything right according to the checklist, one mistake, not only you catch the person, you remember it for times immemorial. Even after the person has forgotten, when did this happen? No, you have forgotten. I'll remind you. Why? Because that love has passed away from the heart. When love is there, even something very blatant, and you forgive. So she says that all human action is based on reactions. Divine action, on the other hand, spontaneously stems from the vision through identity of the necessity of the dharma of each thing and each being. It is a constant perception, spontaneous, effortless, through identity. Meaning thereby the only thing important is to stay connected within. That's all. And see what stems from there. And if we are not connected, to get back, to once again get connected. If something is coming immediately, spontaneously, it could be a vital reaction. To get back and then see what is the deepest and highest truth that comes out. I use the word dharma because it's neither law nor truth but both together. In order for this being to go by the shortest way to his goal. It was so clear. So how are we to discover this dharma and to live it? Finally, the steps that given in Isha Upanishad, several places it is there in the Gita, but in the Gita, in all scriptures, and of course we have read Mother and Sri Aurobindo. It starts very interestingly. Yagnavalk prays. He says, Hiranymayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushana pavranu satya dharmaya drishtya. I want to know the law of truth. So what is the law of truth? Because he has seen, he has discovered that wideness, that all this is an expression of the divine, manifestation of the divine. So how do I act? If all is the divine, how do I act? So he aspires that give me that law of truth. So then we have a series of slokas. And one is that what is the divine? Though all is divine, yet he describes that he is the wisdom that has gone into this world. And that wisdom we must try to connect. What is that wisdom trying to manifest in this world? But more importantly, it says, remember, Vayuranil amritam achedam bhasmantam sariram. Om krito smar kritam smar krito smar kritam smar. Don't act on the basis of just the body and the bodily life. What is pleasant, what is going to be, good for it, for my comfort. Divine never acts on that basis. But what we must remember, oh will, what is my aspiration? What is my goal? What is it for which I have come? Remember that. Oh will, that which was done, remember. That which was done, remember. So always to keep this aspiration as the steering compass. And if that is not there, goal is not there, then it's finding truth and living the truth, then all that is far cry. Then all that can be said is first find the goal and be clear about the aspiration. That's the first thing necessary. And then what the Rishi says, he prays to Agni and he says, take me to the path of the right, the path of felicity. I surrender myself to you completely. Make the crooked straight. So now this making the crooked straight is very interesting. Many times there is a truth which is expressing itself, but by the time it comes into the mind and the vital, it becomes twisted. So it's not like this is true and this is false. Falsehood is twisting of truth. Mother explains this very beautifully, and there is a very interesting line in the Bible. What does the devil do? Devil quotes the scripture, twisting it. He just twists the truth a little bit, and it becomes a falsehood. So what Agni does, it untwists and makes it straight and clear. It sees the true impulsion and the artificial twisting because of desire, because of pleasure. All these things get involved. So we have to remove that and keep that true impulsion always intact, which is a more difficult task than simply rejecting things in toto. So he prays to Agni, who can make the crooked straight? Aspiration. So if we remember our aspiration all the time, the goal, then automatically we will start, there will be a pressure on the movement. In fact, we don't have to do anything. This Agni will put the pressure. When Mother was asked how the new world will be created, she said, have you not read Sri Aurobindo? In the Vedas, he says that the new world will be created by the pressure of the will and faith, the idea. It's the pressure of the will. So that should not be, we should never justify and say, no, it's okay. The will should always be there all the time that I want the divine, I want the divine, I want the divine, I want that. So what happens because of this pressure which increases inside its Agni, the false movement begins to get straightened out. It cannot bear it. So Agni ne suptaraya. What is the sign that I am living this truth? There will be a state of felicity. If one is in a state of anger, depression, pessimism, be sure that one has moved very far from the truth. One simple test that I am going closer to the divine or not. Am I happy or am I sad? If I am sad, I am whatever I may be doing, all puja, part, meditation, but I am going further from the divine. Because he is Anandamay. To go close to him always brings felicity. So one should look inside. Pessimism is the tail of the devil. So all these things. So Agni. And then he relies upon Agni that you are the divine. Who is Agni? Agni is the divine mother's will in us. Divine mother's will. I surrender to you. To keep telling her, let thy will be done. I do not know. In my ignorance, I may ask things. I may do things. I may say things. But you are the Lord. You should change it by superimposing your will upon my ignorance. I'll close with a story how even when we have seemingly made what is called as a mistake, and again we have read that in the divine conception, and this story typically typifies it. Long back, this was told to me by someone who had heard directly from the person. They had taken Mother and Sri Aurobindo's photographs and from here, and those days you had to cover it. It was not like anybody and everybody can see. So one day he noticed that a fungus has crept inside the photograph. And he felt very miserable. What to do? So he was so tormented. So he prays to Sri Aurobindo. Why didn't you give me the intelligence to keep it in the correct way? Now look at the prayer. He says, you should have given me this thought and intelligence. Now you take care of it. I don't like this, but I don't know what to do. And he describes slowly the entire thing disappeared. This story is so beautiful and illustrative. Many times we may act foolishly, which deep within we know is not in conformity with that truth. Yet we must surrender and bear ourselves. This is the other side of sincerity, most important. Mother said, when you come before me, be transparent. Don't try to hide. Don't become a sadhu bacha. Because anyways I'll see. So people would ask that, why do we need to tell you, everything? Said to see how much you are conscious of. If you are not conscious of, and on a very personal note, I'll close this, that if you are not conscious of it, I'll make you conscious. So long back, decades, there was something going on. Every life has something going on. So I wrote 30, maybe more than that, pages letter to Mother. And this is our way. Any problem, write to her. आंसू भी पड़े सब, आप all my side of the story and mother act and this thing. Mother acted, the immediate problem, of course, went away. But more importantly, over the years, I discovered that all that I wrote in the letter was not how things were. The whole perception changed. And when after 10 years I looked back, because I remembered what I had gone through and how I had perceived, I realized no, none of my perception was true. It was an entire net which was clouding the vision. And when she took it away, I realized that this was complete. So the advantage was that when you bear yourself before the mother, it doesn't matter, our perception may be anything. She just looks at us, she smiles, and without our knowing, silently, just shifts the needle just a little to the right, to the correct center. And that is what is called making the crooked straight. So let us live with this great truth. We are living by truth. The sign will be we'll be at peace and happy within ourselves. And if we are unhappy, agitated, anxious, distressed, sad, we can take it for sure that we are moving away from the divine. Same with one-step test, free of cost, about the general health and well-being of a person. When a person walks into your clinic, just see whether he is smiling or not. If he is smiling, he is safe in the Lord's arms. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alok. Can I ask a question, actually?
Yes.
I'm just thinking of someone that's not really sort of speaking totally in conformity with the truth. In fact, he's telling her what's termed in English a white lie, which is something that is said with very good intentions, very almost benevolent sometimes, but it's not the truth. But it's with good intentions. How does that sort of stand up against the whole?
So white lie, meaning thereby it is a lie, but it is said with good intentions. That's what it means.
It's with good intention. Maybe even protect someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one is the divine. Most important thing, the divine does see the intent. He is not a mechanical. That was the whole thing about that story of Ashwatthama Hatavata. That look at the larger context. So certainly, the divine is not a dogmatic about you must speak the truth in this way. And there is a very nice story. There is a little story about it, true story. Because Sri Aurobindo said you should never utter a lie consciously or unconsciously. So this is one part of it. But a story goes about Surendranath Johar when he had asked Sri Aurobindo, not Surendranath Johar, Surendranath Banerjee, when he had asked Sri Aurobindo in a certain context in the court case that, he'll be called upon as a witness. So what should he do? Because if he tells the truth, then the person will be convicted and it will be very unfair. And Sri Aurobindo said two things. You don't always have to speak, you can remain silent. It was so wonderful. You can remain silent. Second thing which he said, truth has to be seen as a whole and in totality, not in bits and parts. So that is what will answer this. It has to be seen in totality and not in bits and parts. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes,
Dr. Pandey, I want to know if we are following Swadharma and we are following the path of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we are more or less protected, taken care of, yet our mind would like to gauge how much we have done or how much far we have traveled. This question now and then, if it comes, is it good?
It's if we have walked the path, sometimes there is a tendency to monitor ourselves that how much we have progressed. It is not good to start with, and why it is not good, let me explain. One is that in this path, especially, this path is like a Sampurna Himalaya Darshan. So, the divine may start showing us an aspect of the Himalaya which is very beautiful. And usually it starts like that. in the first stages, such a beautiful experiences, all psychic experiences. But he has to also take us into those hidden layers of den of beasts where they are growling. So if somebody really sees these two in terms of time, one may think that one is not progressed, rather one has gone down. But in the divine wisdom, actually this going down is to clear a passage so that one can take a leap forward. That's how the entire system of pralaya works. And that's how in human consciousness, we see that these things which we call as ups and downs, beautifully described in Savitri, is he speaks about the, when somebody seemingly falls, one is pulled down from above and goes into a state which can be called as falls. Now, normally it would be said that, well, the person has fallen. So it's not progress, but going down. And Sri Aurobindo says, this too the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means to greater rise. And then he explains that what the divine does in that moment, he enters into the tumult of the senses in our darker parts till they do feel the need and will to change. Otherwise, what will happen? Just the soul will go and fuse with the divine. What about nature? So, in this particular yoga especially, who is advancing, not advancing, progressing, retrogressing, it's something which is not only best, should never be done. Second is that another problem is the moment I monitor myself, I am thinking of myself, consciousness is turned upon myself. That means somewhere the ego was there pursuing the yoga almost like an ambition, that I want to achieve something. Let me see how much I have achieved. This itself becomes a bar to progress. Whereas yoga, at least the way Mother and Sri Aurobindo has spoken about it, is to forget oneself. So when we forget ourselves, all that we need to remember is how much am I concentrated upon myself and how much I am concentrated upon the divine. Every time the concentration comes upon me, we should turn it the other way and say whether I am progressing, not progressing, is all your business. Ultimately, at one level, third level, what really is progress and, lack of progress? Progress is simply the degree of manifestation of the divine within us. That's what progress is about. It's nothing to do with experiences. For instance, some people believe that if we are having visions and voices, Mother spoke about it, or if one can meditate for many hours, one is progressing. She said, no, it's not true. In fact, she goes on to say that there are disciplines you may practice all your life and yet not be practicing yoga. And she gives them, she says, Hatha Yoga, Raj Yoga. So we may do all these all our life and yet we may not be engaged in the yoga. So yoga is about ultimately giving oneself to the divine. What happens to us is the divine's lookout. And if it looks like we have not progressed, that means he is preparing a great leap. And there is a very beautiful little essay of Sri Aurobindo which I often remember, the strength of stillness. When it seems that we are not advancing because we are jammed, pinned in one place. So we should remember how a tiger or a lion is quiet before the leap. So at that point of time, we should just remember her, gather strength in a state of concentrated stillness. That's all that is required. Progress, not progress, it's a journey taking place through lives, not just, one lifetime. And, there are such fantastic stories about it. I'll close with this little story about a yogi who was doing a kind of Tantra sadhana where every Purnima he has to come and do a special Kali Puja. And there was a curious man in the village and he would one day wanted to know what is happening. What does he do? So one of the full moon night, this yogi came, Tantric came in the forest and on the mat he sat to do the Kali Puja. It seems it was the last of his Ahuti day when Kali would appear. And at that point of time, suddenly a tiger from nowhere came. And this fellow got scared and ran away. And the tiger behind him. What happened to that man, I do not know. But this fellow who was watching suddenly felt curious. Oh, what is this asana? He goes and sits there. And suddenly Kali appears and says, ask. So he is shaken. He says, Mother, I am not the fellow. That fellow has run away. She says, you are questioning my wisdom. You are the fellow. No, mother, I have not done any of this. And then she says that you had done everything in your previous life. This one thing was waiting. And now that moment has come and you can have the fruits. Many times, one life is only for preparation. Show me those words incidentally. And another for fruition. So we must wait for the right season. And each one seasons are different. Look at, there are certain flowers, flowering plant. They will give flowers very nicely. And people love them. They don't grow very tall. Huh? But look at the bamboo. For years, nothing is happening. But then when it comes, it moves so fast, so swiftly. And not only does it move so fast, so swiftly, this seemingly worthless plant is used by Shri Krishna to hold the Govardhan Parvat and used by Shri Krishna to play his flute. So everything, progress is something which is unique and individual to each one, and only the divine knows what is happening inside and which way to take us, whether through the carnage of Kurukshetra or make us sit and meditate like a Buddha. And we should leave it to him. Arjuna never meditated, apparently. And if one were to gauge his progress, somebody asked Arjuna, hey Arjuna, how much do you meditate every day? He'll say, I don't know, I'm with Keshav all the time, he doesn't give me time. I'm busy, chatting with him. And if somebody told him that, what do you do all day? I love archery, that's what I'm doing. I'm skilled at archery, that I just enjoy. I also play nice mridangam, I dance. Oh, this is no good. Did you ever have a vision? I don't know what is that vision. And the day he has a vision, he has the vision of visions. And Arjuna is blessed simply because all that he had was love for the Lord. So instead of worrying about anything about ourselves, all that we need to ask and cultivate is love for the Divine Mother. And if we cannot do that, then just to remember that the Mother loves us. That's all that is required in the yoga, to perfect our love to a point where with every breath and heartbeat we can love her. Till the last moment of our life we can love her. That is progress in this yoga. The only question to be asked is, how much have I given myself? Are there bits and pieces which I am holding, clinging on to for my own sake? Give it to the Divine. It may be ugly, it may be good, doesn't matter. He accepts all, patram pushpam phalam toyam, and turns it into the mint of divinity.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alok.
Thank you.
On that beautiful note, we'll end the session.